Hello, all. This is Christy David, and for today's assignment, I will be going over Chapter 8 and Chapter 9 from McLuhan's Understanding Media, Extensions of Man. First of all, we're going to start in Chapter 8, which is entitled The Spoken Word, Flower of Evil. Spoken word was first introduced in McLuhan's work in Chapter 6, Media as Translators. He said that the spoken word was the first technology by which man was able to let go of his environment in order to grasp it in a new way. By means of translation of immediate sense experience into vocal symbols, the entire world can be evoked and retrieved at any instance. That's found on page 85. McLuhan continues on this idea in Chapter 8. But before we get into the details of Chapter 8 and the spoken word, I just want to give you an overall summary of what this chapter involved. McLuhan spends some time at the beginning of the chapter going through some examples that show the difference between the spoken experience and written experience. He pulls out from his examples the fact that the spoken experience is very participatory, that it's dramatic, it's sensuous, and it's quite involved. McLuhan then brings to light an example that shows us that the spoken word does not allow for privacy in the way that the written word experience does. He talks about how individualism is found through the written word versus the spoken word. He then moves us on into some ideas presented by Henry Bergson and how he explained that the development of language has increased consciousness of the individual at the expense of the consciousness of the collective mind. McLuhan ends his chapter with a paragraph about electronic technology and the implications that it has for the future. He shows that electronic technology, it has the potential to lessen the need for language. Well, that is basically a summary of what all is involved in Chapter 8. Now I want to take time to actually get into the spoken word as a medium. The spoken word is a medium in the fact that it's an extension of man's thoughts and his intellect. This medium then becomes a message because it creates a greater scale of interaction between human beings, between a human's own emotions and how they express those emotions. And it also creates the need then for other forms of communication, such as the written word, which we're going to take a look at in Chapter 9. As far as how the spoken word has altered people, it's done several things. One thing that it has done is it has allowed for a person to become disconnected from the collective conscious. McLuhan states that it is the extension of man in speech that enables the intellect to detach itself from the vastly wider reality. Speech also separates man from other creations, such as the animal, where it allows us to express emotion and feeling instead of just instinct. The speech patterns of humans also allow us to connect ourselves to different specific groups. There's things known as language community, which is the large collective community of people who speak the same language, like English. And then there's also the speech community, which is those who speak the same jargons and dialects and a very specific style of that larger speech community. And so speech then also alters man because it opens up the ability to divide who we are down to how we speak. Spoken word is a metaphor to be compared to that of the radio transmitter. McLuhan states on page 114 that the human voice may be compared to the radio transmitter in being able to translate sound into electromagnetic waves. The power of the voice to shape air and shape space into verbal patterns may well have been preceded by a less specialized expression of cries, grunts, gestures, and commands, of song and dance. Hot or cold? Is spoken word a hot or a cold medium? Well, spoken word is most definitely a cold medium. Every spoken word is presented through verbal and nonverbal means. So, to properly decode a spoken word or a speech act, there is a high participation that's required. One must not only hear what the person is saying, but they must also visually see the nonverbals being attached to those verbal words. On page 112 to 113, McLuhan does an excellent job at showing the coldness of the spoken word through an example. He says that there are not many ways of writing tonight, but Stanislavski used to ask his young actors to pronounce and stress it 50 different ways while the audience wrote down the different shades of feeling and meaning expressed. So he's saying that semantically, the word tonight is only one thing. However, we can verbalize it in multiple ways. You can say it tonight in a question form, or tonight in an angry, demanding form, or tonight in an excited form. The ability to express different emotions, and then the person who is interpreting those emotions having to draw on different senses to interpret it properly, backs up the fact that the spoken word is a cold medium. In concluding chapter 8, we need to think about how the spoken language is seen today. How is it still being used? Obviously, spoken language is still used in our modern culture, but it has been replaced quite a bit with written word, which is what we're going to look at in chapter 9. The introduction of the phonetic alphabet drastically has reduced the need for spoken word. Through things of our modern culture like texting, it's not as necessary to speak with someone for them to receive the messages that we need to put across, the meaning that we need to put across.